Children of about 9 to 13 years old, and obviously all children are different, so they grow up at different rates and so forth, but when they are bereaved, they are far more aware than younger children of the long-term and practical implications. So there may be all sorts of worries about home and money and property and how the family is going to function and so forth. And they may be questions that either they're asking, which might be difficult when things are unsettled at home, or there may be things that they feel they can't ask but are hidden worries. Also, a death around them at this time can bring what we might think of as separation anxiety. So, a child who has lost a parent, for example, or some other close family relative may become very clingy around those around them because they are certainly not going to want to let them out of their sight. And sometimes in normal times when we're going to school and so forth, this can result in school refusal. Also, of course, this is a time when many children are coming into puberty and the hormones are kicking off, and so we naturally see greater swings of mood and temperament. But of course, this is all exacerbated with a significant loss. And so being what we might think of as dramatic or explosive is more likely in this age group. And the other thing is that they're coming into a time where socially their peers are becoming very, very important. So the things that they are focusing on will be wanting to fit in, wanting not to be different, and of course, having had somebody die, it's a big deal, but you may feel at this age that you don't want to be telling your friends, you don't want to be talking about it because it's not a fun thing to talk about. And I can remember working with a child who said to me, well, none of my friends know. She hadn't told any of her friends that her mother had died because she said, I don't want to be known as the miserable one with the dead mother. And although that may seem callous to us, actually it's very real, because at this stage of development it's all about fitting in with your peers and working out where you belong socially in a group. Unfortunately, we do see incidents of bullying. Sometimes bereaved children can be bullied. Children can say some really cruel and nasty things at this age, often because they don't really know what they can say. They don't really know how we deal with this. And actually, as adults, we're not very good at this. We often hear of people who, they've lost a partner and their neighbours will cross the road or avoid them in the supermarket rather than talk to them. And this is simply because they just don't know what to say and they feel uncomfortable and they feel ill-equipped. And children are the same. And sometimes, unfortunately, when they feel ill-equipped, they will say something that is really inappropriate and hurtful. And so what we can do to help them is to discuss with them what it is and what isn't appropriate to say. So we might say to a child, you may not know what to say to your friend, but say to them, I'm thinking of you. I'm really sorry to hear that so-and-so has died, and I'm thinking of you. And, perhaps say, if you ever want to play football or if you ever want to meet up and just be together, then, let me know. And just letting somebody know that you're there is important. Even down to saying, actually, there's nothing I can say. I don't know what to say that's going to make it better, but I just want you to know that I'm thinking about you and I do care. Of course, I'm recording this at the time of the coronavirus and we can't meet up and we can't physically be there, but we can call each other and we can video chat, and young people can play online games together, and these are what friendships are made of. Another thing that you might see at this age is that a child may suddenly seem to become terribly mature, suddenly doing all the things they should be doing and being very sensible. And, this might come down to a child suddenly doing all their homework on time or keeping their room terribly tidy. And although that sounds marvellous in some ways, if this is a major change in behaviour, it can signal some of that magical thinking that we were talking about with the younger age group, where the child has somehow got the idea that maybe they've done something to cause the death, or that in some way they haven't been good enough or it's their fault. And it may not be that conscious, but by trying to do everything perfectly, it can be an attempt to control or to prevent something else awful happening. So these are things it's very important that we perhaps have a conversation around that and reiterate that it's not their fault. It's also sort of, if you know about the 5 stages of grief, I'm not going to go into them now, but if you know about the 5 stages of grief, which actually was developed by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and it was about people coming to terms with their own mortality rather than the loss of a loved one. But if you know about that, this is the bargaining stage. If I do this perfectly, perhaps everything will be all right. This is the stage that we're talking about. Having said that, the opposite might happen, and you may find a young person around this age group regressing, so suddenly they seem to be far more childish. It might show up in academic performance, a drop in their reading or writing ages. It might come out in the return of a childhood stammer, for example, or clumsiness, lack of fine motor skills. But a regression in terms of behaviour is usually temporary, and it's a defence mechanism. It's a way that a child they retreat to a time at which they felt safe, and it's quite a healthy response. But all these things can be seen. Not all will be, but these are quite common responses in that age group between sort of 9 and 13.